Alright guys, welcome to RC Mojo. Today we'll be having a quick look at the classic Kyosho Pathfinder. This won't be a build as I built it many years before RC Mojo was a thing. I'm pretty sure my camera at the time took high 8 tapes. The truck came out in around 1992 I believe, and I'm pretty sure I got this one around 95 or 96. This is of course the nitro version. Electric models were weak as water back then, so if you wanted power and runtime, nitro was the only option. The engine was only 2cc, but it's plenty to get the truck moving. The amazing bit was the gearbox. It's a continuously variable transmission. Basically, there's a lever that moves up and down that changes the gear ratio and the direction for forward and reverse. It's amazing that they got it to fit in such a small box. Here's the feature list. I won't read it out. If you want to study it, you can always pause the video. On the end, we've got some descriptions. I especially like the FOOP link live axle. Yes, that's a typo. Nice. Also, copyright 1991. Older than I thought. There's another block of text in capitals to make sure we get the point. If you want to read it, pause the video. Right then, let's see what's left in the box. There's the grille, still on its sprue, along with the mirrors and bits. It's moulded from a soft rubbery plastic with some give in it. Excellent. Here's the body mounts, a brilliant design that doesn't require any body clips. My first few hobby grade RCs all had them. I remember being a little bit disappointed when I first got a car that needed separate clips. Some screw cement, unopened, nice. Here's the plug driver. It took 4 C-cells I think. Again, never opened it as I had a NiCad glow stick to use instead. The tailgate part with spare tyre cover. It's all in the detail bits like this that make a Lexan body really look good. It hides all the otherwise simplistic outlines. 2 hubcaps. Not sure where the other 2 are. For the paperwork, we've got what appears to be a parts list, some sprue diagrams and instructions for the body. And for those that thought I was slightly odd for painting the front of the Jimny with a brush, all my early kits were Kyosho, and Kyosho use a brush for the detail bits. There's quite a few bits that get fitted to the body. There's loads of detail. Here's the body mounts. You flip the top bit so it's pointing up, pop the body on and flip down the clip. There's also a spring that holds it all tight so you don't get any rattles. Best body mounting I've ever seen. The throttle linkage was always a bit of a pain. One servo needs to do several things. It required notes to work out how it should all go together. Back when kits were kits. Untouched decal sheet, none of this die cut rubbish. It's all left for you to decide how to cut them out. Carburetor instruction sheet, complete with diagrams. And of course the complete engine diagram. It's even got the parts for the water-cooled head for the boat version. Nice. For some reason I do seem to have 2 copies though. I don't ever remember replacing the engine, so that's a bit odd. Last thing in the box is the guide for using a nitro car. Useful things like don't drive next to trains and don't poke at the hot bits. The art's quite good though. Even if you don't speak any of the printed languages, you'll still get the idea. Well, that's the box then. One fairly major bit missing. The manual is nowhere to be seen. I'm fairly sure it's with a stack of other RC manuals, but I've got no idea where the stack is. They're probably not in the garage or the loft as I try and keep them in the house where it's nice and dry. If I do end up finding it, I'll put some pics up on Twitter. One more thing before we get to the chassis. The body, in perfect condition, not a scratch on it, never cut or trimmed, rare as hen's teeth. I've had a few offers for it over the years, but I can't really sell it and leave the chassis without a properly fitting body. It's a bit of an odd size compared to the usual ones available these days. It's not quite as nicely detailed as the Tamiya shells, but it's not bad at all. And here's the chassis. It's mostly plastic, but it's extremely well thought out. Everything interlocks, the choice of plastics is brilliant, flexible where it needs it and rigid where it doesn't. And even after all these years it feels just as nice as the day it was built. The CCVT gearbox sits on the side, and unlike most modern trucks it's driven with a toothed belt from the engine's clutch. The gearbox drives the centre diff with a belt too. Turning the input gear as it is at the moment gives us forward drive in the equivalent of top gear. Moving the lever all the way to the other end we get reverse. Everything in between gives you the variable gear ratio with the centre being open. It can be a bit finicky, and when it's not spinning the lever can be extremely stiff. It probably needs taking apart and a bit of a clean, or at the very least some oil. For the throttle, there's a sprung cam arrangement. The carb's a bit sticky, so it's not as smooth as it should be. When the servo moves from centre, it opens the carb for forward and reverse. Another thing you don't really see these days, the exhaust has a lever on it too. There's a butterfly in there that opens with the throttle, so not only is the intake throttled, but the exhaust is too. These days, with a modern radio, you could do away with a lot of the mechanics and use separate servos for the throttle and gearbox and use the mixes in the transmitter to do the job with far more flexibility. Now, because this is a scale truck, it doesn't need to go that quick, and there's not a lot of airflow over the engine. So the flywheel is quite a bit bigger than usual, and it's got fan blades in it to keep the air moving. Not sure how effective it is though. It's blowing at the crankcase rather than the heatsink on the head, but it's got to be better than nothing. The fuel tank has a good old screw cap, very reliable as long as you don't lose it in long grass. For steering, we've got a single servo that drives a crank arm with a built-in servo saver, a lot like a 1/8 buggy. It then drives a drag link and off to the hubs. Very little slop, something that even now Tamiya really haven't got the hang of. Underneath, we've got the suspension and the driveline. Again, like a 1/8 buggy, this truck has 3 differentials. Great for trundling around, but not so good for crawling, as if one wheel loses traction, you're stuffed. There's a cover for the centre diff, but I've long since lost all the original screws. The rear has a solid axle, 4-link and a panhard bar. It has very little slop and yet moves ridiculously smoothly. Great design. It's not just a rock crawler axle that's been bodged in place, or the floppy mess of the stock CC01. It's just nice. The wheel hexes are all aluminium. The steel axle shafts have a slight taper to them and the hex gets pressed onto it with the wheel. No pin and yet no slip. It's got to be the best rear setup with coilovers I've ever come across. The front suspension is fully independent but with a huge throw. And again, silky smooth and virtually no slop. The bump steer is possibly a little bit excessive, but other than that it's just brilliant. And probably why I'm rarely impressed with the out-of-the-box fit and finish of most modern kits. I used to have this chassis on the end of my desk and just sit there playing with the suspension. Good times. The hubs have brass balls rather than the usual kingpins, giving a huge freedom of movement. It's fairly common these days. The TT01 does something similar, as do a lot of 1/8 kits. Back to the bottom, all the drive shafts are steel. The front shaft is extra chunky so it can't twist. It's really a very robust system. The exhaust is almost a good idea. They have a moulded tube that takes the exhaust down through a hole in the chassis, which keeps the area around the engine nice and clean. But it directs it straight at the rear tyre, and as anyone who runs a nitro truck knows, the exhaust has quite a lot of oil in it. And as you can guess, it's going to make a real mess of that tyre. A long time ago, I remember someone fitting an OS 4-stroke. Not only did it sound better, but he ran the exhaust right to the back bumper, so in normal operation it all ran very cleanly. One of those things I always wanted to do with this one, but I reckon I'd probably get lynched by the Kyosho collectors if I did it now. And that's nearly it, just one more thing. At the back there's 2 hooks that swing out for tow ropes. They even have a sprung safety clip. Brilliant! This has to be my favourite in terms of design, all-time truck. I'm a little bit biased towards old Kyoshos as that's where I started. It's just a lovely bit of engineering. Someday I'd love to get hold of an electric one and fit it with some modern electrics, even if it's just set up to trundle around. It would be great fun. Actually, I wonder if the engine still runs. Well, would you look at that? It does. All I did was run a little bit of fresh oil through the engine and fill the gearbox to the line. Some fresh 10% fuel and off she went. The tuning's a little bit off, but it's not been run for a very long time. The weather's probably changed a bit. Right, I'm going to give it some throttle and play with the CCVT lever. My hand's in the way, but it's not easy to get to otherwise. As I move the lever in and out, you can just about see the wheels going from forward to reverse, all with a constant throttle on the engine. Great fun, and I think it's pretty unique on an RC. Well, the engine did cut out, partially because the carburettor's a little bit gummy. and I always had a problem where the load from the gearbox would gradually increase when spinning and eventually stall the engine. But now it's even more tempting to get it rolling again. Anyway, that brings us to the end of the video, and I hope you liked what you saw. If you did, by all means hit the like button, and if you're not already, you can subscribe too. It's free after all. Bye guys.